The ship floated like a ghost in the endless dark. No stars shone near, no planets offered light. Only the silence of deep space wrapped around it, heavy and unbroken. The vessel had once been proud, an exploration cruiser built to carry its crew across the galaxy. Now it was nothing more than a drifting shell, powerless and alone. Inside the ship, dim lights flickered, struggling to stay alive as the last of the energy drained away. Cold air pressed into the corridors, and each breath from the crew turned into mist before fading into nothing. Every corner of the ship carried the same truth. Death was closing in. The crew had once been full of hope. They had set out to chart unknown regions, to discover new worlds and new life. But now those dreams felt like distant lies. Their engines had failed weeks ago after a terrible malfunction. Attempts to repair the damage had failed, and their supplies had dropped to dangerous levels. They had sent signal after signal, calling for help, but the void answered only with silence. No one came. No one even seemed to hear. Fear spread slowly among them. At first they told themselves rescue would arrive. But days stretched into weeks, and hope grew weaker. Their captain tried to keep discipline, tried to hold them together, but even his voice now trembled when he spoke. In the dark hours, when no one could sleep, whispers filled the ship. Whispers of despair, whispers of death. Some wondered if it would be better to end it quickly rather than wait for the air to run out. Others clung to the faint idea that maybe, just maybe, someone out there would hear their cries. The darkness outside the windows seemed alive. The crew often stared at it, as if expecting shadows to move or monsters to appear. But nothing came. Only silence. The vast emptiness pressed against their minds, reminding them how small they were in the galaxy. Each passing hour felt like a weight crushing their spirit. Hunger gnawed at their bodies. Thirst burned their throats. Every step down the metal halls felt heavier than the last. Some of the younger crew members cried quietly in their bunks, hiding their faces from the others. No one had the strength to comfort them. They were all prisoners of the same fate. In the control room, the communication officer sat before a dark screen. His hands trembled as he typed another distress call, sending it out into the infinite black. He knew the chances were almost nothing. Still, he sent it because doing nothing was worse. The faint signal raced away into space, carrying with it the last breath of their hope. He whispered, "Please, someone hear us. Please." The captain stood behind him, silent, watching the message vanish into the void. His face was pale, eyes hollow, but inside his chest burned a small fire. He would not give up until the very end. "Keep sending it," he ordered. "Until the system dies, we keep sending it." And so the call went out again, and again, an endless cry into endless night. Time blurred. Hours and days became meaningless. The crew grew weaker, their bodies slow, their voices tired. Some had stopped rising from their bunks altogether. Life support systems were nearly finished, their screens flashing red warnings across the control panels. The smell of failure hung in the stale air. Yet still the distress signal pulsed outward like a heartbeat. Somewhere, perhaps, someone might hear. Or perhaps the void would swallow it forever, as it had swallowed so many others before. The silence was total. Too total. Sometimes the crew thought they heard things in the static, faint voices, strange echoes, but every time it was only their imagination. The galaxy was empty, and they were alone. And yet, even in the darkest moment, a strange feeling touched the captain's mind. It was impossible to explain. He felt as though something was out there. Something was watching, listening. His hand rested on the cold glass of the observation window as he stared into the endless dark. "Is anyone out there?" he whispered, though no one answered. Behind him, the crew slept fitfully, haunted by dreams of suffocation and silence. The lights of the ship dimmed further, shadows stretching long across the empty corridors. The air grew colder, harsher, almost biting at their skin. The sound of the engines was gone. The ship was dead, lifeless except for the few hearts still beating within. All around them stretched an ocean of stars, far away, unreachable. In that moment, The crew truly understood how fragile life was in the face of the cosmos. Every second felt like their last. Then, the communication console flickered. For a moment, no one noticed. Then the officer sat up, eyes wide. A tiny light blinked where before there had been only darkness. The distress signal had received an answer. It was faint, distorted, almost impossible to understand. But it was there. A voice carried through the static, strange and unfamiliar. The crew rushed into the control room, their tired eyes suddenly alive with fear and hope. The message was short, only a few words. Yet it was enough to silence the room completely. Something had heard them. Something was out there in the endless dark. And it was coming. The crew gathered around the console, their tired faces lit by the faint glow of the screen. For weeks they had lived with silence, with nothing but the hum of failing systems and the sound of their own shallow breaths. Now a signal had reached them, breaking through the endless void. The voice was broken, hidden behind static, but it was real. Something had answered. No one spoke for a long time. They only stared at the screen, hardly daring to believe. The communication officer's hands shook as he adjusted the controls, trying to clear the signal. The noise hissed, then the words grew a little sharper. It was not their language. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had studied many tongues across the galaxy, but these sounds were different, heavy, powerful. The captain leaned close to the console, his eyes narrow. "Can you translate it?" he asked. The officer worked quickly, feeding the sound into the translation system. The machine whirred, struggling, then finally produced a rough result. The words appeared on the screen, broken but clear enough. Signal received. Hold position. Gasps filled the room. Someone had heard them. Someone knew they were here. For the first time in weeks, a spark of hope flickered in their hearts. Yet fear soon followed. Who had answered? Was it friend or foe? They had sent their message to anyone who could hear. They had begged blindly, desperate for life. But not all who might respond would come with kindness. The navigator whispered, "What if it is pirates? What if it is slavers?" Another crew member shook his head. "Then we are already doomed. At least this way. There is a chance." The captain raised his hand, silencing the fearful voices. Hope and danger often come together. We cannot choose. We can only wait. His tone was firm, but inside his heart beat like a drum. He too feared what might be approaching, but he would not let his crew see it. Hours passed. The ship remained silent except for the faint beeping of the console. Outside, the dark was endless, a sea of shadows with no comfort. The crew gathered in small groups, whispering about what might come. Some prayed quietly, others sharpened small blades, ready to defend themselves if needed. The youngest among them clutched an old picture of his family, his tears falling softly onto the worn image. In the command deck, the captain remained awake, staring at the radar. He had ordered the officer to keep the channel open. From time to time the strange signal returned, always repeating the same message, "Hold position." The words were steady, almost commanding. Whoever was coming did not sound weak. The crew wondered what kind of vessel could project such power across the dark. Their fuel was nearly gone. Their air was running thin. They had no strength to move, even if they wanted to. Holding position was all they could do. Yet with every passing moment, the tension grew heavier. Each vibration of the console, each flash of the radar, made their hearts pound. Then, at last, the radar screen lit up. A single object had entered range, far away but moving fast. The crew gathered around, their voices trembling. "It's coming this way," the officer whispered. The shape was huge compared to their broken ship. Its speed was steady, its course direct. Whoever had answered their call was now closing the distance. Panic filled the room. Some shouted that they should shut off the distress beacon, hide, and pray not to be found. Others argued it was too late. The captain raised his voice over the noise. "Enough. We will not tear ourselves apart before they arrive. We will wait." We will see who they are. His eyes locked on the glowing shape on the radar. He felt the weight of every soul on board pressing on his shoulders. If this was their doom, he would face it standing, not crawling in fear. The object grew closer, each hour drawing it nearer to the dying ship. Soon its signal was strong enough to fill the speakers. The alien crew listened in silence as the strange voice spoke again. This time the translation system gave a clearer reading. Do not be afraid. Help is on the way. The words struck them like lightning. Some fell to their knees in relief, others cried openly. The idea of help after so much despair seemed almost impossible. And yet, suspicion still lingered. Why would a stranger help them? What did these unknown beings want in return? The navigator asked in a quiet voice. Captain, do you believe them? The captain looked out into the endless dark, where the unknown ship was still only a distant shadow. His jaw tightened. I believe nothing yet. But I will not throw away the chance. The crew remained restless. Some allowed hope to rise in their hearts, while others feared betrayal. The hours dragged on, each one stretching into forever. The dying systems of their vessel beeped faint warnings, and the air grew thinner with each breath. Still, the signal came again and again, repeating its promise of aid. Outside, the radar showed the massive shape closing in, growing larger with every passing moment. The crew held their breath, waiting to see what form would soon emerge from the dark. They did not know what kind of ship it was. They did not know if its crew came to save or destroy. All they knew was that their call had been heard, and something powerful was answering. Somewhere deep inside, fear and hope fought for control of their hearts. In the silence of deep space, the crew waited, every soul balanced on the edge of salvation and doom. The alien crew stood frozen as the radar lines pulsed again, showing the massive object moving closer with each passing minute. Their ship, weak and broken, felt like a small insect drifting before a storm. No one spoke for a long time. The sound of their shallow breathing filled the control room. They all knew the truth. Whatever was coming toward them was far stronger than they could ever resist. Their captain leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the growing signal. The display showed size estimates, and even though the system was failing, the numbers made their hearts sink. The ship approaching them was vast, many times larger than their own cruiser. It is not a freighter, whispered the navigator, his voice trembling. It is not a rescue craft. It is a warship. His words spread through the room like a cold wind. Some of the younger crew members gasped, and fear rippled across their faces. A warship meant power, meant weapons, meant destruction. It could crush them without effort. The communication officer adjusted the static-filled channel, and again the strange voice spoke through. Calm, commanding, but still in that foreign tongue. The translation device struggled, then revealed the message, "Do not fear. We are near." The words were kind, but the crew could not relax. Too many times in history had powerful ships promised peace before delivering death. They all knew stories of empires that enslaved entire planets, pirates who lured victims with false comfort, predators that smiled before they killed. Who were these beings? Why would a warship come in answer to a distress call? The captain held his silence for a long time. His crew watched him, waiting for an order, waiting for hope. Finally, he spoke with a low voice. We cannot stop them. We cannot fight them. All we can do is face them with dignity. His words carried strength, even if fear hid inside. The crew nodded, but none could stop their hearts from pounding. Hours passed as the shape on the radar grew larger and larger. At last, the moment came when it entered visual range. The crew gathered at the viewing deck, pressing against the cold glass, their eyes wide. Out of the endless dark, lights appeared. Small at first, like distant stars, but then growing brighter, sharper. A silhouette began to take form. It was unlike any vessel they had ever seen. Its body was massive, armored with thick layers of steel and strange glowing lines that pulsed like veins of fire. Towers rose from its surface, carrying weapons larger than their entire ship. The alien crew could not look away. Their fear grew with every detail that appeared. One whispered, "It is a beast, a machine built only for war." Another muttered, "Why would such a monster come for us?" The ship moved with steady purpose, no hesitation, no sign of weakness. It closed the distance in silence, like a predator stalking its prey. The crew backed away from the glass, some trembling, some whispering prayers. Only the captain stood still, his gaze fixed on the giant vessel that now filled the view. The voice came again through the comms, clearer now, stronger than before. The translation system worked quickly, flashing the words onto the screen. "We hear your call. Hold steady. You are not alone." The words should have brought comfort, but instead they deepened the mystery. Who were these beings who spoke with such confidence? Why did they answer the cry of strangers? The crew looked at their captain, searching his face for guidance. He said nothing. He only stared at the massive warship, his thoughts hidden, his jaw tight. Deep inside, he wondered if this was salvation, or the beginning of a nightmare. The giant vessel slowed as it neared, its lights sweeping across the broken cruiser like eyes studying prey. The crew felt small, weak, powerless. Every instinct in their bodies screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go. Their engines were dead, their ship was trapped in the dark. They could only wait and watch as the warship stopped just beyond their hull. For a long moment, nothing happened. The silence was unbearable. Then, bright beams of light burst from the warship, cutting through the dark like spears of the sun. The alien crew shielded their eyes, blinking in awe and fear. The beams scanned their ship, passing over the cracked hull, the failing systems, the weakened life signs inside. They felt naked under that light, exposed, judged. A voice filled the speakers again, calm but powerful. "You are safe. Do not resist. Help is coming." The translation system repeated the words, and for the first time, some of the crew dared to breathe deeply. But suspicion still burned in their hearts. A warship with such strength did not need to ask them not to resist. It could crush them in an instant if it wished. The youngest crew member whispered, "Captain, do you trust them?" The captain's eyes stayed locked on the giant vessel outside. His voice was steady but cold. "Trust? No. But I will not waste the hand that fate has given us." Behind him, the crew remained silent, fear and hope fighting within them. Outside, the warship drifted closer, and its presence filled the void with a weight that pressed against their very souls. It was no ordinary ship. It was something far greater, something built for battles beyond their imagination. And yet, it had answered their cry. The alien crew did not know whether to rejoice or tremble. All they knew was this: whatever was about to happen, their lives would never be the same again. The alien crew stood frozen as the massive warship loomed over their crippled vessel, its vast frame blotting out the stars beyond. It did not move quickly or carelessly, but with the calm confidence of something that had nothing to fear. The dying alien cruiser shuddered as the gravity fields of the larger ship brushed against it, and for a moment the crew thought their hull might split apart under the pressure. The captain gripped the railing with white knuckles, forcing his breath to remain steady, though his heart thundered in his chest. The comms crackled again, and this time the voice was clearer than ever before, deep and steady, carrying no hint of fear. The translation system displayed the words across the screen. "We hear you. Do not fear." The crew stared at the message in silence. Some felt relief, but others only felt the weight of dread grow heavier. What kind of beings commanded such a vessel, and why would they care for the weak cries of strangers? Outside the glass, the warship's lights grew brighter, hundreds of glowing windows and flashing beacons cutting through the darkness like a city floating in the void. Strange symbols glowed along its hull, a language unknown to the alien crew, yet sharp and powerful in appearance. Weapons the size of towers lined its sides, silent but waiting, each one capable of turning their fragile ship to ash in seconds. The communication officer whispered, "Captain, they mean to help us, don't they?" But his voice carried little conviction. The captain did not answer. His eyes narrowed as he studied the massive ship that now drifted closer and closer until it filled their view entirely. Then the alien vessel shivered again as something detached from the warship's underbelly. At first, it was hard to see in the dark, but soon the truth became clear. Small pods, dozens of them, streaked across the void toward their broken ship. The crew cried out in alarm, some leaping back from the glass as if the pods would break through immediately. The navigator shouted, "Boarding craft! They are coming aboard!" Panic rippled through the control room. Many shouted to arm themselves, to prepare for battle, to fight against whatever these creatures intended to do. But the captain raised his voice, sharp and firm. "No, we cannot resist them. We would not last a heartbeat against that vessel. Stand your ground. Wait." His words calmed them, but only slightly. Their eyes still darted nervously toward the window as the pods drew nearer, glowing engines lighting the path across the void. The ship's sensors picked them up, confirming that they carried life forms, dozens of them. The captain's thoughts raced. Why would a warship send so many? If they meant harm, this would be the end. Yet the voice from the comms had spoken gently, promising safety. Could it be true? The first pod connected with their airlock, and the alien ship groaned as clamps secured the link. For a moment, there was silence again, and the crew held their breath. Then the hiss of pressurized air filled the corridor, and the heavy door creaked open. The crew raised their weapons, shaking but ready, as the shadows of tall figures appeared in the doorway. They stepped inside slowly, their forms strange yet unmistakably alive. Their armor gleamed under the dim lights, black and silver with glowing panels along the chest and shoulders. Their movements were steady, disciplined, like soldiers. And when their faces became visible, the crew gasped in shock. The beings were human. Stories of humanity had reached their people before, whispered rumors carried through the galaxy like ghost tales. Some spoke of humans as monsters, destroyers of worlds. Others claimed they were protectors, warriors of honor who defended the weak. The aliens had never known which was true. Now the truth stood before them in flesh and blood. One of the humans stepped forward, removing his helmet, revealing a scarred face with sharp eyes that glowed with determination. His voice was deep, and though the translation system lagged for a moment, the meaning came clear enough: "We are here to help." The crew exchanged stunned looks. Could it be possible? Could such powerful beings truly come for no reason other than to aid strangers lost in the dark? The captain stepped forward slowly, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender but also respect. His voice was steady though his heart trembled. "Why?" he asked simply. The human leader met his gaze, then answered with words that carried no hesitation. "Because no one is left behind in the dark." The crew felt the weight of those words sink into their hearts. Some lowered their weapons, others simply stared in disbelief. The humans spread through the ship, carrying supplies, equipment, and medical kits. They moved with confidence but not cruelty. They offered food, water, and oxygen to the starving crew. They treated the wounded with gentle hands, even as their armor made them look like machines of war. Yet still, not all the aliens were ready to trust. One officer whispered to another, "What if this is a trick? What if they are only keeping us alive for something worse?" The doubt remained heavy in their hearts, but none could deny the relief of breathing fresh air, of drinking clean water, of seeing their dying ship flicker back to life under human repair tools. For the first time in endless weeks, life returned to the corridors, voices lifted not in despair but in cautious hope. Still, the captain's eyes remained sharp. He thanked the human commander, but inside his mind he knew the danger was not gone. Humans had power greater than anything he had ever seen. And power always came with a price. As the humans continued their work, the alien crew whispered among themselves, torn between gratitude and fear. Outside, the massive warship waited in silence, a giant shadow against the stars, its presence both terrifying and comforting. The captain could not shake the thought that their fate now rested entirely in human hands. Salvation and destruction had arrived together, and the line between them was as thin as a breath. The alien crew watched as the humans spread through the dying vessel, their armored boots echoing against the hollow metal floors. Wherever they walked, light seemed to follow. They carried strange packs that released warmth into the freezing corridors and devices that filled the stale air with fresh oxygen. For the first time in weeks, the crew could breathe deeply, though their chests still trembled with fear. The humans worked in silence, efficient and fast, speaking to each other in their sharp language that the alien ears could not understand. They set up medical stations, handing out small containers of liquid and simple food bars that seemed to carry more strength than an entire meal. The starving crew accepted them with shaking hands, but suspicion lingered in their eyes. Some whispered to each other that this was a trick, that humans were feeding them only to keep them alive for whatever purpose came next. One officer, a hard-eyed veteran, refused to touch the food at all. "Poison," he muttered under his breath. "They will weaken us and take us as prisoners." But others could not resist. They ate, and warmth spread through their bodies, giving them strength they had not felt in days. For a brief moment, hope flickered again. Yet the shadow of doubt never left. The captain stood close to the human commander, watching his every move. The human was taller than most of the crew, his shoulders broad, his armor marked with scars from battles long past. His face carried no cruelty, but it carried weight, the kind of weight only a warrior bore. When he spoke, his words were calm, and the translator repeated them in broken but clear phrases. "You are safe. We will not harm you." The crew wanted to believe, but they had lived too long in the galaxy to trust so easily. Many species spoke of humans with fear. Some called them saviors, others conquerors, but all agreed on one truth: humans were dangerous. The navigator whispered quietly to the captain. "Why would they risk themselves for us? What do they want in return?" The captain gave no answer. He only studied the human commander, trying to read the truth in his eyes. The humans moved deeper into the ship, repairing systems with tools that sparked and hummed in ways the aliens had never seen. They worked quickly, restoring power to darkened halls, patching leaks, and stabilizing the failing life support. Their presence was overwhelming. They filled every space with the strength of their bodies and the calm authority of their actions. It was clear that if they wished, they could seize the ship without resistance. This thought chilled the crew even as they watched their vessel come slowly back to life. The officer who had refused the food finally spoke out loud, his voice sharp with anger. "We are fools," he hissed. "We beg for help, and now we are trapped in the claws of predators. They will take us, enslave us, or worse. Do you not see? A warship does not come to give charity. It comes to claim what it wants." His words stirred unrest among the crew, and murmurs filled the air. The captain silenced them with a raised hand. His voice was steady, though tension pulled at the corners of his mouth. "We are alive because of them. Without their ship, we would already be drifting corpses in the void. Doubt is wise, but do not throw away the life they have returned to us. Watch. Wait. We will learn their true intent soon enough." The human commander seemed to sense their unease. He removed his helmet once again, showing his scarred face, and spoke directly, his voice softer than before. The translator took a moment, then delivered the words, "No one is left to die alone in the dark. That is our promise." The crew fell silent. Some lowered their heads in respect, touched by the strange honor in those words. Others looked away, unwilling to believe. The captain held the human's gaze for a long time, searching for deception, but found only steady determination. Still, he knew better than to trust so quickly. Gratitude and caution must walk together. As the humans continued their work, one of the younger crew members whispered, "Perhaps they truly are what the legends say, protectors, not monsters." But the officer with hard eyes growled in reply, "Or perhaps they are clever hunters, wrapping their claws in silk before they strike." The question hung heavy in the air, unspoken yet pressing on every heart: rescue or trap? No one could answer. Outside, the human warship remained in silent orbit, its countless weapons glinting faintly against the stars. Its presence was a constant reminder of power, of the fine line between salvation and destruction. The alien crew, though alive and breathing, could not escape the truth. They were now in the hands of humanity, and humanity was an enigma. Kindness and violence walked together in their legend. Which side would reveal itself here, in the endless dark? The crew could only wait and hope, even as fear gnawed at their thoughts. The alien crew slowly grew used to the presence of the humans on their ship, though unease never left their eyes. Days of fear and hunger had left them weak, but with food in their stomachs and air filling their lungs again, they began to walk with a little more strength. Yet suspicion lived inside their hearts, whispering with every glance at the armored soldiers moving through the corridors. The human commander spoke little, but when he did, his words carried certainty and calm, as though he bore no doubt about what needed to be done. The crew watched them repair systems that their own engineers had long given up on, and they could not understand how such tools existed, or how the humans seemed to work as one mind. Even so, the fear that this was all a trap still lingered. Then, on the third cycle after the warship's arrival, the scanners on the alien ship came alive with strange signals. At first the crew thought it was another malfunction, but the human technicians reacted immediately, rushing to the console with sharp movements. They exchanged quick words in their own tongue, their expressions darkening. The captain approached, demanding to know what they had seen. The human commander turned toward him, and though the translation system struggled to keep up, the meaning was clear: something is following us. A chill ran through the crew. They crowded around the display, watching as faint blips appeared on the edge of the scanner's range. The signals were weak, flickering, but they were not natural. Something was out there in the darkness, watching, closing the distance. Panic began to spread. Some shouted that the humans had betrayed them, that the signals were proof of an ambush. Others believed it was pirates who had tracked the distress call, or worse, an enemy empire who had come to finish what fate had already begun. The captain silenced them with a raised hand, though fear stirred in his own chest. "What are they?" he asked. The human commander's face was grim. The translator flashed. "Hostile ships. Small. Fast. They are hunting." The alien crew fell silent, their stomachs sinking with dread. They knew the truth in his words. No one else would come to this part of space except hunters or killers. The crew exchanged nervous glances, realizing that without the human warship they would already be dead. The captain swallowed hard, then asked, "Will you fight them?" The commander met his gaze, and his reply was steady. "We will protect you. Stay inside." The words, so simple, struck like thunder. The alien crew watched as the humans returned to their pods and withdrew back to their warship. Through the observation windows, the massive vessel began to move, its engines glowing with power far greater than anything the aliens had ever seen. It shifted position, placing itself between the crippled cruiser and the approaching signals. The crew stared in awe, their fear now mixed with wonder. The enemy ships crept closer, faint shadows in the void, their speed rising. The alien sensors confirmed at least 6 of them, maybe more, moving in formation. Their intent was clear: they were predators, and the crippled alien cruiser was prey. But now a human warship stood in their path. Inside the broken vessel, the alien crew whispered among themselves, their voices filled with disbelief. They had called for help, and something had answered. Yet now, they would see what kind of help humanity truly offered. Some still feared betrayal, that the humans would turn on them once the danger passed. But for now, there was no choice but to trust. Their eyes remained fixed on the void beyond the glass, where the shadows of the hunters grew larger. The silence inside the ship was heavy, every crew member holding their breath. Then, for the first time, they witnessed the human warship in motion. Lights flickered across its armored hull, weapons shifting into position. Great cannons turned, missile bays opened, and strange glowing arrays hummed with rising energy. The air itself seemed to tremble with the power that ship carried. The alien crew could only stare, their fear now joined by awe so sharp it hurt. The captain's voice was low, almost a whisper. "Now we learn the truth of humans." Outside, the hunters drew closer, confident of their kill, unaware of the storm waiting for them. And deep in the endless dark, the crew realized they were about to see why humans were feared across the stars. The alien crew pressed against the observation glass as the first of the enemy ships appeared in the distance, sharp and predatory, their sleek frames cutting through the void with speed. They moved like wolves hunting a wounded animal, confident that their prey could not resist. For a moment the aliens felt despair rise again, for their cruiser was weak and broken, and against such foes they would be nothing but drifting wreckage. But then their eyes turned to the human warship that now stood between them and death, its massive hull gleaming with cold light, its weapons awake. The silence of deep space was shattered when the human vessel opened fire. There was no warning, no hesitation. From its sides erupted streaks of blazing energy, railguns roaring with thunder that seemed to vibrate through the very bones of the alien crew. Missiles streaked into the dark like burning stars, leaving trails of fire before slamming into the approaching ships. The first hunter ship vanished in an instant, torn apart by a direct hit that scattered its remains into a storm of glowing fragments. The alien crew gasped, their eyes wide with both terror and awe. They had seen warships before, but nothing like this. The humans fought with precision, every shot placed with deadly accuracy, as though they had trained for this very moment all their lives. The hunters tried to scatter, breaking formation, but the warship moved with frightening speed for its size, cutting across the void like a predator of its own. Its cannons spoke again, and another ship was reduced to a burst of fire. The alien crew could hear their own heartbeats pounding in their ears as they watched the battle unfold, powerless but unable to look away. One whispered, "They could destroy us just as easily." Another replied, "Yes, but they do not." The words hung in the air like a strange kind of prayer. Outside, the hunters fought back, spitting beams of energy and volleys of plasma at the human vessel. Explosions rippled against its shields, flashes of light brightening the dark. But the warship did not falter. It returned every strike with fury, its weapons cutting through the enemy one by one. The humans fought like beings who had no fear of death, only a promise to protect. The alien captain stood silently, his eyes fixed on the giant vessel as it tore through the hunters. In that moment, he understood why stories of humanity spread like fire across the stars. He had heard whispers before, legends of human ferocity, of their refusal to surrender, of their ability to turn even hopeless battles into victories. Now he was seeing it with his own eyes, and the truth was more terrifying and more beautiful than any tale. Another hunter ship exploded under the weight of human firepower, and the void lit up with burning debris. The last survivors turned to flee, their courage broken, their formation shattered. But the warship pursued them with relentless speed. Its weapons roared again, and soon only silence returned to the stars. The alien crew stared into the darkness where moments ago enemies had hunted them. Now there was nothing left but drifting wreckage and the steady glow of the human vessel. For a long time no one spoke. Then, slowly, one of the younger crew members whispered, "They saved us." His words trembled, but they carried truth. Others nodded, their suspicion weakened by the sight of such sacrifice. If humans had wished to destroy them, they would not have wasted such strength defending them. The officer who had once doubted still frowned, his voice bitter. Or they destroyed the hunters for their own gain. Perhaps they only keep us alive because they want something greater. Yet even he could not hide the awe in his voice as he stared at the warship's glowing silhouette. The captain finally turned to his crew, his voice quiet but firm. "Do you see? Whatever else they may be, humans are not to be taken lightly. They are protectors, yes, but also warriors beyond compare." His words filled the room with a strange silence, heavy with respect and fear together. Outside, the warship drifted back toward the broken cruiser, its weapons cooling, its engines glowing softly. It did not boast or celebrate. It moved with the same calm it had carried from the start, as though such a battle was nothing unusual. The alien crew held their breath as the comms came alive again. The translation system flickered, then displayed the words, "You are safe now. We will guide you." The crew exchanged looks of disbelief, their minds struggling to accept what they had just witnessed. They had seen death approach them, and they had seen humanity stand against it. In that moment, the line between fear and gratitude blurred, and they realized that their fates now belonged to these strange and powerful beings. And in the silent dark, one thought echoed in every heart: if this is the strength of humanity, then what could possibly stand against them? The silence that followed the battle felt heavier than the roar of weapons, as if the void itself was catching its breath. The alien crew remained at the observation window, their eyes locked on the human warship that floated before them, scarred by the fight yet standing firm. Wreckage of the enemy hunters drifted in the distance, glowing faintly like dying embers, a reminder of the danger that had nearly consumed them. For a long time no one spoke, each alien lost in thought, struggling to grasp what had just taken place. They had been certain of death, trapped and powerless, and yet these strangers had answered their call, fought for them, and given them life once more. At last the silence broke when the human commander's voice returned through the comms, translated into words they could understand. "You are safe now. We will take you to shelter." Simple words, without pride or demand, but they struck deep into the alien hearts. Their captain lowered his head, unable to hide the trembling in his hands. Around him, the crew whispered in awe, and some even in tears. They had seen warships before, they had heard tales of mighty fleets, but never had they seen such power used with such restraint. The humans had risked their own vessel, their own lives, for no promise of reward. It was an act that the crew could not explain. The officer who had doubted the humans most remained quiet, his usual sharpness gone, replaced with a haunted expression. Finally he said, almost in a whisper, "If they wished to conquer, they could have destroyed us instead. But they chose not to." The captain nodded slowly, then rose to his feet, his voice carrying across the bridge. "We will not forget this." His words were heavy with conviction, and the crew felt their meaning settle deep into their souls. The human warship extended docking tethers, pulling the crippled alien vessel closer, guiding it like a guardian leading the weak. Repairs continued as supplies were shared, and soon the alien crew felt strength returning to their bodies. But even as their hunger faded and their breath grew steady, their thoughts remained on the humans who had saved them. Some of the younger crew whispered stories already, telling each other that perhaps humanity was sent by the stars themselves, an answer to prayers shouted into the endless dark. The captain, however, watched quietly, his eyes fixed on the warship outside, his mind weighing the truth of what had unfolded. At last the convoy reached a distant human starbase, a structure vast and alive with light, orbiting a barren planet. For the aliens, it was like a city in the heavens, shining with hope. Human vessels moved in graceful formation, and voices of calm authority guided their docking. The broken cruiser was brought into safety at last. As the alien crew disembarked, they were met not with weapons or chains, but with open hands offering aid. Food, medicine, and places to rest were given freely. The aliens exchanged uncertain glances, still waiting for the moment when the kindness would end and the demand for payment would come. Yet no such demand was spoken. The human commander approached the alien captain once more, his face steady and his voice clear. Through the translator, the words appeared, "Why do you look so surprised? No one deserves to die alone in the dark." The alien captain froze, his throat tightening. It was such a simple statement, and yet it carried a weight greater than any oath he had ever spoken. Slowly, with respect born of both fear and gratitude, he bowed his head. "We will remember," he said softly. "Your people will be remembered in our histories, not as destroyers, but as saviors." Around him, the crew echoed his words, their voices trembling but full of truth. They knew that their species had been touched by something rare, something that would be spoken of for generations. The humans, calm and almost indifferent, seemed not to care about glory or legend, but to the aliens, the meaning was everything. That night, in the resting quarters provided by their hosts, the alien crew swore quietly among themselves that they would carry the story to every star they could reach. They would speak of the day they were lost in the endless dark, and the day a human battleship answered. They would speak of the fire that tore through their hunters, and of the words that bound them together. No one left alone in the void. And across the stars, the legend of humanity began to spread, not only as warriors of unimaginable strength, but as protectors who chose compassion when destruction would have been easier. It was a truth the aliens carried with reverence, a truth that would outlive them all. In the silence of space, where once there had only been despair, now there was a spark of hope, and that spark bore the name of humanity.